Staying with the road to elections, we are just a week away. Now, the IEC says people between the ages of 16 and 29 make almost 80% of all first-time registrations for these polls. But despite these numbers and major problems facing young people, questions remain about whether youth voter apathy will again be a feature. Well, let's speak with it to young people about this. Ndiphiwe Olayi is from the DA, Sanele Zondo from the IFP, Sthembelo Majola is from ActionSA, and Nombulelo Nyaphela is representing the ANC Youth League. Good evening to all of you. Thanks very much for your time. If I may start with you, Nombulelo, have you done enough to just get young people to the polls next week?
I think so. I think that the ANC Youth League has worked incredibly hard in the last few weeks to make sure that young people are not only voting for the ANC but are turning up to vote. And we kind of understand that, you know, if young people are registering to vote, the intention is there for them to vote. I think it's about us showing them that these democratic systems must work for them and do work for them once they've voted. So what happens? And our view is, and our considered view is that young people need to know that once they've voted, these institutions they interface with are not only credible, but make sure that their vote is counted and make sure that their vote is heard.
But do democratic systems work for young people?
We think that they do. I mean, and I think that the democratic institutions that they interface with, for example, the IEC #1 is a credible institution. So once you vote, your vote will be counted. No one is going to say that your vote will not be counted. #2, once Parliament is constituted, young people must participate in that very democracy they've voted for. So these young people that will represent them in Parliament, these public participation forums they can participate in, where they can also influence legislation and so on, says to us that young people, you know, can have a say in what happens to them. And of course, we don't think that it's 100% there, but it certainly is not, all is not lost. We think that young people definitely have a say, and once they vote, their vote certainly counts and matters.
Do you agree, Sthembelo, that democratic systems in this country do or are working for young people?
Look, I don't think that's the case. Unfortunately, the ANC has been in power for quite some time, and if they were doing quite well, we should have been seeing that young people are interested in taking part in these democratic processes. The very fact that we've got that much little voter registration amongst the demographic of young people tells you that they are not interested in this. This has not yet spoken to them. But fortunately, what I think is happening on our side, you were asking her about the campaign trail. We are also being received quite well in the communities that we've been to. Young people are recognizing the impact that ActionSA is bringing in the coalitions that we've been part of, and they do recognize that we are bringing a meaningful difference when we take part in government. So that's the response that we've been receiving from young people, and I mean, it's giving us hope that the turnout is going to be in our favor.
But does what you described right at the beginning of your input not turn young people away because they realize that there is not, as much as there is a lot at stake for them, but the system doesn't work in their favor. It actually works against, as you yourself said.
I think what we need to recognize is that the benefits that young people get out of a working government system is that, especially in the context of South Africa, we're a country where over 60% of young people cannot find employment. I mean, they are unemployed. Some of them have been unemployed for quite a long time, and that speaks to the difficulty that this government is having with creating employment, and we must speak to that. And ActionSA has a plan to resolve that and also deliver an economic system that actually creates employment. That's because we are not a political party that is adverse to business. We want to work. We see business, we see the private sector as a partner that we should be working with in building this country. And that is why our plans have a better chance of creating employment in the Republic, because we are not adverse to business. We actually want them to succeed, because their success translates to the success of South Africans by creating employment. that's what we are going to deliver.
And Ndiphiwe, I mean, what are young South Africans telling you? And I'm talking here about young people outside of your party, those you want to, convince that it's actually worth going to the poll and voting.
Thank you very much. Good evening to yourself and your viewers. Well, to be very honest, I've been on this campaign trail for a number of years. And I'm saying yes specifically because the program of action of the Democratic Alliance Youth has been long coming. We've been trying to usher in a new government where young people can actually be confident in the state as it be. When we look at Chapter 9 institutions such as the IEC, we have to then find ourselves in a position of being able to trust these independent institutions. However, as we've been alluding to, that we do need observer status for many individuals to ensure that everything's above and beyond. And I can tell you about the sentiments of young people on the ground as I've been engaging through various constituencies, boards, and areas throughout the country. Even today, as I sit here, I'm currently in Kayamandi Township, where I come from an active door-to-door trying to campaign young people to bring them out to vote, because it is indeed one thing to register people, but another thing to ensure that they do actually come out to vote. The sentiment on the ground, to be very honest, is that young people have lost the trust in government. Young people no longer feel that the government responds to their needs. Young people no longer feel that government is there to serve their interests. Instead, young people feel that the government is self-serving. And this is the type of things that we've been out on the communities trying to explain and expose to young people, saying that just because for the past 30 years, young people have been exposed to one type of government does not mean that nationally that this government is the status quo and it needs to be this way. One thing that we've exposed to young people, as we see in the Western Cape, that there is indeed a viable alternative, an alternative that works to uplift the lives of young people tangibly on a day-to-day basis, an alternative that is there to ensure that the material conditions of young people are actually bettered for, improved for future generations and their current material conditions at the very moment. But all these current things that are happening on the state, where we look, if we're not going to get amnesia, if we look back, we'll even recall as back as COVID times, where there was a lockdown, and many people don't understand why lockdowns are being imposed. A lot of people, especially young people, lost jobs. Young people were taken away from opportunities. We were forced as young people then to look at ourselves independent from the state as to how do we better the material conditions, not only of ourselves, but of our families and our environment as large. But going forward, we will work day to day to ensure that young people understand that there is indeed a viable alternative and that young people have the power to ensure that the future is indeed harnessed and taken care of by a political alternative such as the Democratic Alliance that will ensure that their lives and that their interests are well looked after.
Did you think those you tried to convince listened to you?
And if I sit here, I'm not going to play politics or anything. I'm going to be very frank with you. When you look at convincing, there's a lot of youth apathy on the ground. But once you start to engage young people, because we know that there's a social media age, where we see on TikTok and Twitter, there's a lot of fake news that is being pushed, and that counters a very narrative, or counters the reality rather on the ground, where there's a difference between young people and getting access to opportunities and their lived realities. When we engage these young people and show them that there is indeed a track record of success, a track record that can be proved beyond any measurable doubt, that there is a government that is in place that can cater for this, then young people start opening their minds at the alternative. Young people start exploring the alternative of a possibility of having a state and having a government that is actually there to cater for them.
Nombulelo, you don't think that part of the problem that is perhaps a contributor to apathy that is being acknowledged by all is the fact that for most of the time, and this is probably the worst time to be asking this, election time, less than a week to go before people go to elections, is precisely because as young people, you don't even attempt to find, areas of common interest and work on them collectively.
I think sometimes we do, but yes, of course, the fact that we can be at each other's throats on matters we all agree on can be very difficult. And at an electioneering time, we do have to pivot what we've done. And I think there's no other organization here that has any track record of anything other than the ANC, to be honest and frank. There's no other job in any other organization that has created an expanded public works program of millions of young people like the ANC, and is going to expand that to 2.5 million in the next administration. There's no other organization that has made sure that there's at least worth 10 billion worth of projects completed in construction, where young people have been hired throughout the 6th administration, and will increase that in the 7th administration. There's no organization that has come up with the youth employment service that has made sure that young people have national school feeding scheme, that makes sure that there's black industrialists, that make sure that there's worker ownership. None of these organizations have done that. Only the ANC has had that foresight. And I think even though it's very easy to come in and say, well, we think that we can do better and there's an alternative. They've not really created or presented an alternative. The ANC is carrying that burden at a national level. The Western Cape does not do that. Only the ANC at a national level carries those programs and carries the hopes and dreams of young people. And I must say that we do in our own spaces find common ground, and especially this young leader here is in council. I'm pretty sure that is part of a very elaborate program by the city of Joburg to make sure that young people, are finding jobs, and works with an ANC government. But of course, we're at election season, and I think we must pivot and say that the ANC has done the most. No one else here has tried anything. I mean, they're just all talk.
Wouldn't you acknowledge, Sthembelo, that partisanship is a contributor?
I think it has been made to be a contributor. I think when it speaks to the reality that we have in government right now, where you see many people getting opportunities in government just because they are members of the political party. That is not the kind of government that South Africans aspire to have. The kind of government that we want to have is one where public service is not dependent on, when you talk about a good governance, no one says that the possibility of having a good governance depends on whether someone is a member of a political party. We need to embrace the system of meritocracy. And that speaks to, you put it in place, people that have the skills to do the job and are qualified to do that job. And the reality is that we've seen our state-owned entities being destroyed because people that are placed there are placed by a committee that exists inside a political party. So that committee has so much power that it decides on who should run our ESCOM, and this is why we're having a problem with load shedding.
I don't know. I mean, Ndiphiwe, is there no merit in an argument that says, perhaps inadvertently, all of you as activists of your respective political parties are so inward-looking and focused on proving who's better than who, than looking together as young people at what can get young people of this country out of the quagmire we are in?
Thank you very much. And I'll sit here and I'll be lying to you if I said I've never been at the forefront of advocating for a situation where all young people, regardless of political lines, that will come together and chart a way forward. As recent as last year or a year or 2 years ago, we even engaged with the leadership of the ANC Youth League about the situation at NYDA. At NYDA, you find a situation where a lot of its budget, it's around about 800 million rand annually, is paid to salaries of cadres of the ANC Youth League. And the rest is being stolen or allocated unjustly. And these are the situations on the ground that we've been a proponent on. And the delegate here or the representative here of the Youth League should not come here and mislead the people. We've heard a lot of stories from the ANC, particularly its Youth League. Perhaps they just sit there waiting to be feeding from the gravy train. But if you do come to the Western Cape and where the DA governs, you will see that opportunities are there for young people. Do not be misled by the Twitter revolutionaries who do not understand the tangible change that impacts young people on the ground. I'll make a clean example of the youth access certificates that allow young people get public transport, to be able to attend interviews. Because we do understand that once young people are unemployed, they look for job opportunities. They need to find a way to access to go to those interviews. They need to find a way to print their CVs. Only in the Western Cape government, in the city of Cape Town, where we are saying young people are actively looking for jobs, have free access on the Golden Arrow buses, where they can go to the interviews so that they can get into the employment market. And if we talk here, we can all talk about nice things and fluffy things, but let's not allow the youth league to come and mislead us as young people. They've done that for the longest of time. We need tangible change. And the way that we can see what the difference is between us here in the Western Cape and anywhere else is numbers. Numbers do not lie. The Western Cape has the lowest unemployment rate in the country, and that's just a fact. It's not me and Ndiphiwe Olayi sitting there saying this. It's a fact that has been proven. So let's not come here and be fluffy and try to be this type of woke tendencies. We want opportunities. We want access. For far too long, the ANC Youth League has been there next to the gravy train, waiting for their opportunity to eat. As the dear youth, we are here on the ground with people day to day, exposing them to opportunities, offering them what do our governments do to ensure we uplift the young people in this country, particularly in the Western Cape, and where we do govern. So I will not sit here.
Nombulelo, I mean, obviously, I mean, the ANC holds a different view. I mean, your president has said it, State of the Nation address. I mean, during the launch of your manifesto, that the NYDA is doing very well. Thank you very much.
The NYDA is doing well. The NYDA has to partner with different government departments to be able to kind of expand the work that they do. So of course, it does. The NYDA doesn't have the biggest budget in government, and that's the honest truth. But the NYDA does have convening power as people that are appointed by the president and is able to partner. And I think just today or yesterday, I must have seen the CEO of the NYDA finally sign into they're going to execute now this program with the SANDF to make sure that young people are coming into for employment opportunities with the SANDF. So it's not, and that's an ANC manifesto thing. So it's not to say that they are not, they are. And they do this with a range of other departments. Just to speak to the point that the gentleman is making on making sure that young people are able to access their interviews. I mean, like, we came up with that. I mean, it's an old program of the ANC Youth League. It's primitive. We've been doing that anyway. But I think what's important is that let's not undermine the young people that are sitting in the States, young people that apply and go into job interviews and get those jobs, and you say that someone is sitting somewhere and said you are cadre deployed and therefore you must go in there, and say they don't deserve those jobs. And this is the problem with what the city of Joburg did with those young people they fired. These were competent young people that qualified, had the requisite qualifications, and the DA said, no, but it's cadre deployment, therefore you can't be here. That's what the DA did, and then put those very same people out of employment. I mean, it's just funny how you can speak about young people and employment when they fired like 120 or 50 young people in the city of Joburg alone. Young people that were qualified just so they could hire their own young people. So just to say that these young people that sit in the state, these bright minds that help drive a government program, are there because they deserve to be. They apply for jobs, they go for job interviews, they tick the boxes, they qualify and they work. Do not undermine those young people. They deserve to be there.
And Ndiphiwe Sthembelo, I mean, raises the issue of, he thinks that the part of the reason the NYDA is not working is because a lot of money goes to paying salaries instead of going where it's supposed. Is that the same issue you have, or do you have other issues with how the NYDA works?
It is. I mean, in an organization, you do not want to spend a lot of money paying salaries. A lot of money must go into something that's going to benefit the organization. What is the purpose of the NYDA? Is to open opportunities for young people. If you ask me right now, I mean, I would like her to list things that the NYDA has done just in the past financial year. It's not going to be much. In fact, I bet you now that she doesn't have that list. That's because young people cannot relate to NYDA. They don't know what they represent. That organization has been made to become an organization where the president has the prerogative to reward ANC young people. So when the people of South Africa, when the youth of South Africa look at that, they don't get inspired. They just look at this as another way of rewarding cadres. It's rewarding people that are in the movement, that are assisting people ascend into power. So that is not what the young people of South Africa want to see, and that is what the ANC has done over the years. NYDA does not do a lot for young people. It actually makes the youth of the ANC and the select few youth of the ANC, it gives them opportunities to become chairpersons of that board, to become executive members of that board. And that is not what the young people of South Africa really want.
I'm sure there has to be something that goes way beyond what the NYDA can do to help the crisis levels that where our unemployment situation and youth unemployment in particular is sitting at the moment. There has to be initiatives out there that deal with other problems facing young people in this country, and we're talking about drug abuse, we're talking about substance and alcohol abuse, but we're also talking about young women being abused and being exploited in this country. And I'm going to welcome, but also give you this opportunity, which is probably your first and last, Sanele, to say, how do we move forward? What do we do to address all these challenges that are affecting young people in particular in this country? You have 1 minute, sir.
No, thanks. Thanks for hosting me. Greetings to all the comrades from in the panel. One should appreciate the opportunity. And as the IFP, I think we've done enough, and we've demonstrated that we have a plan to fix South Africa in terms of youth employment, youth development, in terms of education, skill development, all those aspects. We have a plan on how are we going to change the status quo. I think it's a shame to hear ANC members when they are talking about the NYDA and their agencies, because all their agencies, they become their branches, whereby they deploy and expropriate money from those agencies. And as the IFP, we've stated that we are going to realign all these agencies and try to make sure that they talk direct to the needs and the challenges of the young people of this country, to make sure that we address equally, because the problem is what you just said, that NYDA has become an entity for youth of the ANC. If you are not an ANC, you won't benefit in those agencies. And as the IFP, we are promising that we'll make sure that state agencies will be corrupt-free, and we'll make sure that it benefit all young people, regardless of your regala that you are wearing. So, because you can't go to sleep with a regala, you can't develop yourself with a T-shirt of a party.
I'm afraid
I'll
have to stop you there. I indulge you a bit because, you joined us late. Ndiphiwe, where will your party take us if you were to win this election?
No, thank you very much. And I think I would just like to wrap off with the actual facts of the matter. Without anyone being a populist, as the ANC is trying to be, they keep on talking. It's just been a talk shop for the past 30 years. One thing that I would like to say for young people, directly to young people, is to say that the only viable alternative there is to ensure that young people live the lives that they deserve to live is to entrust the DA, to ensure that we invest heavily on infrastructure development and economic development that will create an environment for entrepreneurs to thrive. Once that happens, job creation follows. And I think as a result of so many of our social economic ills is a result of individuals being trapped in poverty. And I believe perhaps one of the pillars of the ANC is to ensure that our people are impoverished so that they can continue being beneficiaries of the welfare state. They do not want to empower our people. At the Democratic Alliance, we ensure that money that is meant for public good is spent on public good. So as the Democratic Alliance, we will ensure, as most people know by now, as the week away from the elections, that we have 7 apex priorities, that we ensure that we create 2 million jobs, that we ensure that we lift 6 million people out of poverty, that we ensure that we triple the amount of young people in a primary education, that they can read and write for meaning, that we ensure that we have a proper healthcare system, not this bogus NHI that was signed conveniently just to boost the type of radical system that the ANC have.
Where will the ANC take young people?
The ANC is building on what it's done in the past few years as it's done. So it's nothing really brand new, but we're just building on what we've been doing. And the first thing is to say that we invest in our people, and we'll continue to invest in our people, whether it's making sure that a child has a meal at school, whether it's making sure that a child is able to get tertiary education, making sure that a child or a person is able to get quality health care. That's what the ANC does. The second thing is that we're tackling the high cost of living. We understand that young people are feeling the pinch. We're finding ways to make sure that when you buy bread or at least your basket, you don't feel the pinch as much as you could. And we're doing that in a range of ways. We don't have time to get into it. The third thing is that we will defend our democracy and our democratic gains. We won't listen to anyone who wants to undermine these democratic institutions we worked hard to build. We will defend the IEC, and we will defend these elections that we're going into. And the last thing is to say that we're advancing the interests of young people, whether it's in jobs, whether it's in making sure that they're involved in new industries that are coming up, making sure that we're skilling young people. Just look at what Gauteng is doing. The ANC is advancing all of that. We have a track record. We've built this country. We've built the industries in this country. We've made sure that many young people are getting opportunities. And just as you say, the NYDA is not doing enough. I mean, tell that to the young people that go to Brazil who are farmers and get opportunities to showcase their produce. Tell that to young people that go out of the country in the textile industry. Just tell those young people that apply to get these opportunities through the NYDA that they don't deserve it because the NYDA is so called for comrades when it's not. The ANC will do more in the 7th administration. Thank you.
Look, what I need her to tell young people is what has the ANC done over the past few years. The reality is that we've got many young people in this country that are still unable to find jobs. Look, I've got friends. Some of them have been asking me, because I'm part of government in the city of Johannesburg, but they've been asking me, what's happening? Why is the economy doing so badly? Why are we finding ourselves in a position where it is now harder to find employment than it was 6, 7 years ago? The reality is that the ANC has failed. The ANC has pushed business outside of South Africa. The policies that they've brought up are not conducive. They are not encouraging business to invest in this country. And ActionSA has a plan to invite business. The reality is that if you want to create employment, and I'm speaking to this because I know this is what young people need. If you want to create employment, you have to make conditions in that economy suitable for people with the money to come and invest in this economy. And that is what we want to do. That is what the ANC has failed to do over the years. ActionSA has had a track record in the municipalities that we've been a part of, and we still continue to deliver in municipalities like the city of Tshwane, where we've got a deputy mayor and we are part of government. There are tremendous successes that we are making. Just to give you an example, the people of Hammanskraal are going to be getting water before the end of this year. Those are the kind of successes that we want to extrapolate, that we want to bring into the national government. We want all the people of South Africa to enjoy a government that ActionSA is a part of. And that is what ActionSA wants to bring.
Let me thank all of you for agreeing to come through. Really appreciate it. Of course, young people on their own hopes, feelings, and aspirations going into this election in a few days.